This week on the Pro Wrestling Podcast, Eric Bischoff gives his unfiltered thoughts on the CM Punk media scrum debacle. Roman Reigns shoots on Sufferin Succotash and gives just a teaser about him and Logan Paul. EC3 revealed some not so flattering information about the Velveteen Dream, and the Velveteen Dream claps back. Oh boy. And Lars Frederiksen of Rancid gives his thoughts on AEW and meeting CM Punk. I'm your host, Seth Grimes, and this is the Pro Wrestling Podcast. What the fuck is up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Pro Wrestling Podcast. I am your boy, Seth Grimes, and whew, we can just take a breath, relax a little bit. Last week was fucking insane. Us here in the media trying to cover everything that was going on with the AEW media scrum fallout. It was wild. Everybody had their opinions about it. Lots of continuing news that was breaking throughout the week. Things were updating. Everybody had their 2 cents on everything. It was chaos. It was a wild week last week. Even wilder, I would say, than the Vince McMahon retirement, which was certainly, for my money, the busiest time I've had here doing this podcast. But I do think that was trumped by all the CM Punk nonsense last week, but we've chilled out a little bit. This was a little bit of a slower week, but I got lots of juicy tidbits to share with you this week still, including just a little bit of fallout still from last week's CM Punk debacle, because this week Eric Bischoff gave his 2 cents on the AEW media scrum and fallout. Of course, Eric Bischoff never shy to share his opinion. He went into great detail about his thoughts on this whole big mess on his podcast. I only sampled out a little clip, but he went into bigger detail. He was talking about how he felt like the fight backstage wasn't really that big of a deal, that fights are going to happen in professional wrestling. He's had them in his locker room. They've happened in other wrestling locker rooms. Fights are going to be a part of the business. That was not the big deal to Eric Bischoff, and I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I had to say last week, that it wasn't the fight that was the big deal. It was what CM Punk said on the microphone, and that's exactly what Eric Bischoff had to say. Check out this clip.
How would you have handled if Punk started going into business for himself like that?
I would have snatched that mic from him so fucking fast.
That's what I thought. We got to get out of there. Not just let him rant.
I would have snatched that mic from him. Said, thank you very much. Bill, obviously, you're not having a great night. Thanks for your time. Any other questions out there? And just taking the mic away from him. Even if that actually happened and the Young Bucks actually leaked information to Dave Meltzer and Dave Meltzer published that information as a way to put heat on Punk, I completely believe that could have happened. It still doesn't give Punk the right to do what he did, to take millions of dollars each year from AEW and then completely trash the company in the process. For that reason, I would get rid of Punk, regardless of what happened that caused that reaction. Mm-hmm. Punk's reaction to me was far more egregious than the alleged circumstances that caused it. So Punk would have to go under any circumstance. I would never, ever let a guy that buried me in my company while taking millions of dollars from me, I would never let him on television again with a live mic or in an interview with a live mic. I wouldn't want him around. I mean, I just can't imagine a scenario where you'd keep that guy around. I cannot imagine one.
He did. He buried Tony Khan, and that's absolutely unacceptable. I mean, he didn't say anything bad about Tony, but he made Tony look like a bitch. Anytime Tony tried to speak up and say something, Punk just shut him right down. It's not your place to have to say anything. And, maybe Punk wasn't going at it from that perspective. Maybe he just genuinely thought like, hey, it's not your job to have to come out here and say this stuff. But to interrupt your boss like that in front of everybody and just continue on your tirade and then just, talk about how, you're building a company, you're running a company. Everything that he said in that interview just made AEW look like small potatoes, made the rest of the roster look like a bunch of bitches, and made Tony Khan look like a bitch. And that's just not acceptable at all. Eric Bischoff says he would have snatched the microphone away from CM Punk. I don't know that I see Eric Bischoff physically doing anything with CM Punk. Bischoff likes to talk like he's a tough guy, but he's not going to do shit. He even admitted in his podcast that he might be talking out the side of his ass because he said that, in the Ultimate Warrior promo that went on and on and on and went through a commercial break and was still going and went way over its time, Bischoff just sat there and just watched it. Just let it happen. But that was different. That wasn't necessarily Warrior going into business for himself. That was more Warrior just being shitty at his job, right? Like just not knowing or caring much about time cues. Just going to take the time to say what I want to say and meander on like I'm the greatest fucking thing in the world and this is the biggest return in the history of life. And Bischoff just stood there and took it, and admittedly so, when he says he would have snatched the mic away from CM Punk, he went straight to, I let Warrior keep talking, and I didn't snatch the mic from him. But the sentiment was there nonetheless, and it kind of goes back to something I talked about a little bit last week, and other people have too, is what do you do in that situation? There's been plenty of people that have come out and been big tough guys, and they would have shut it down right away, and I would have grabbed that microphone from Punk, said, you listen here, you punk, you don't say those things. Or I would have shut the media scrum down and closed it all down and blah, 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 blah. I don't know that anybody would have or could have done anything in that moment, because what you would have done is you would have fueled the fire. You would have just pissed off CM Punk more. And what's a pissed off CM Punk going to do? He's going to continue to lash out. There was live microphones in that place. There was live cameras in that place. You think if Tony Khan stood up and just said, okay, well, that's the end of the press conference, or tried to snatch the microphone away from CM Punk, that he wasn't going to just keep talking and it wasn't going to get picked up by all the media scrum cameras and microphones that were in the house there? He would have continued to rant. He probably would have flipped the table over and threw some shit. He would have went full nuclear. I mean, he basically did. I mean, it wasn't a pipe bomb. It was a nuclear bomb, right? But Punk would have flipped the fuck out, and we would have gotten him so much worse. Because when he was up there, he was just smug and pissy and cocky and grouchy and ornery and full CM Punk dickface mode, right? But what he wasn't up there was, I mean, he was angry, but he wasn't like fighting angry. You know what I mean? Like he was angry enough to not bite his tongue and to speak his opinion, but he wasn't up there just smashing shit, throwing shit around, raging like a fucking Incredible Hulk monster or anything, right? He would have went full Incredible Hulk monster had anybody tried to shut his speech down, because that was his time to talk, and he planned that from the beginning. He knew he was going to go in there and just fucking let it all fly. And there's reports to the effect, I mean, we know it was premeditated because he was trying to set up Nick Hausman. So we know he had at least kind of had a rough idea of how he was going to get into this tirade and what he was going to try to address. But there were reports that even Tony Khan kind of knew that Punk was going to go in there with a live mic and kind of let people have it a little bit, voice some frustrations. And Tony Khan was going to let him do that. And look, this being pro wrestling, and you compare it to the UFC, and last week we covered UFC had a big backstage brawl, and I compared to how Dana White lets the UFC fighters just kind of have at each other. They go at each other hard. And Dana White doesn't break that shit up unless it's about to get violent or something. But I mean, he lets guys be tough guys and talk shit. And I just, I think that Tony Khan saw that maybe it was going to be good for business. He's on record as saying that, letting guys have a little bit of animosity towards each other is not necessarily a bad thing, that it can create good rivalries and great matches in the ring. I don't know how educated he is on that. I think Tony Khan gets that opinion from maybe watching Rivals on A&E a little bit too much. But yeah, I think he kind of knew that Punk was going to go off a little bit and was just going to kind of let him. I don't think anybody expected Punk to go off to the extent that he did or just bury the whole company. And that's the problem with the whole thing. It's not that Punk spoke out of turn. That's fine. I would encourage that kind of stuff, as a matter of fact. It's entertainment. People like that. Oh, CM Punk shoots at the media scrum on whatever, that's fine. I don't mind that kind of stuff. But when it gets to the point, he damn near took the company down with him. He's done irreparable damage to AEW's image that they're going to have to build back. Remember the barbed wire exploding deathmatch debacle where the bombs didn't go off? They just kind of fizzled and popped, and it was a big mess. A big shit show. There were people that thought that was the end of AEW. And they're going to have to come back from that one. And they did. They had to come back and they had to continue to put on memorable shows to the point where people forgot about that even happened. They had to crawl out of that hole. This is a big hole. This just makes the whole company look bad. It makes the company look like shit. It makes Tony look like shit. Nobody respects Tony anymore. They think he's an absolute cuck. Everybody sees AEW as the second rate. I mean, they always were. They were never bigger than WWE. But I think a lot of people believe that they had the possibility of being one day bigger than WWE or getting to the point where they're heavily competing with WWE, like the Monday Night Wars, where it was back and forth and the ratings and that kind of thing. Now it's just a shit show over there, and they got a lot of work to do to rebuild. And I think the last couple of weeks they've done a good job of just moving forward with everything and trying to leave this in the past, but it's done a lot of damage. And Eric Bischoff is 100% right. Everything he said was right. It's just, would he have actually done that? Or is he just saying that he would have actually done that? Who knows? But it's always interesting to hear Eric's opinion, even though they tend to be negative as fuck. And because of that fact, I do try to avoid Eric Bischoff from time to time, because it seems like that's his weekly tirade is burying AEW over one thing or another. But this was one that I actually really wanted to seek out and hear his thoughts on, because he's been through it. Love or hate Eric Bischoff or any kind of credibility or not, like, he ran a fucking multi-million-dollar wrestling company in a locker room full of megastars for many, many years, where fights happened and attitudes and all of that shit. So go check out that full interview. I have linked it in the description below if you'd like to go check that out on YouTube. And with that said, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next. Your tribal chief, Roman Reigns, was on Impulsive with Logan Paul this week, talking all kinds of different things. This was a fantastic fucking interview. This was very humanizing for old Joe. We got to see a different side of Roman. He's been doing this whole tribal chief gimmick for quite a while now, where he's very stoic, very stern, and very serious, and this was just laid back Joe chill. This was showed a more humanizing side of Joe. He was just kind of chilling, hanging out with the bros. I've said before, the Impulsive podcast is just Logan Paul and a couple of his buddies, and it's very like jocular and just hanging out with a couple of bros, hanging out with the dudes. They're very they're very like simple in their questioning and their demeanor. You know, it's very much, hey, what was it like working with Brock? He's pretty tough. You know, it wasn't exactly stuff like that, but it's basically that kind of stuff, you know. And Roman just fit in. He was just hanging with a couple of dudes, and he seemed like such a cool guy, a regular guy. It gave a whole new look to a guy like Roman Reigns, where, you know, he comes off as so serious and stern on TV that just seeing the lighter side of him, seeing him joke around a little bit, seeing him hold the room like a fucking boss, you know, like he's the man right now, and this absolutely showed it. But it was in this particular clip right here that I thought was interesting when Roman was addressing some of his previously not so entertaining stuff, some of the more awkward promos that he's cut back in the day, specifically the old Sufferin Succotash. Check out this clip.
Have you had flubs before?
Oh yeah.
Any come to mind where you're like, that's really
oh man, not yet. The biggest one. I mean, I've had just some crappy promos that you know, you get in early, you don't have any equity. I want to say something right now. I ain't saying it. You know what I mean? But 10 years ago, Vince is like, you're saying this and it's highlighted, then you're gonna say it. And I said some crazy stuff, which still followed, like the Sufferin Succotash. I don't even remember. I just remember it was Sufferin Succotash. And it was like literally 8 years ago, and it will still be brought. I mean, I delivered some really good work over the past few years, and they'll still be like Suffering Succotash. But
yeah, that was easily the worst promo in the history of the entire WWE. It has to be, right? I mean, I can think of not too many other ones that are just that insufferable. Suffering Succotash. The kids will love it. God damn it. Is that back when Roman was wearing the blue eye contacts and stuff too? Vince was just going out of his way to make him the biggest baby face on the planet. And the fans were not accepting it. The fans hated Roman Reigns. And now they love him. Now they appreciate him because he's a heel. He's a natural born heel. He was always meant to be heel. You can't put a guy like Roman Reigns out there and say, well, Suffering Succotash. That shit will follow him around forever. People will laugh at him about that. But they don't hold it against him. Roman has absolutely moved past that. Roman has unanimous respect from the fans. And I think they were always willing to give it to him. It was just that he was miscast. He was the baby face. Nobody wanted to root for Roman Reigns as the baby face of the company. At least not until he's gone through this heel. You know, mark my words, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that said this, Roman Reigns is going to be a huge baby face. They're going to end up working their way back around to him doing a face turn. And at that point, he's going to be over his shit. The fans are not going to reject him like they're rejecting him now. They're rejecting him on his first babyface run. It's because he was miscast. They want to hate Roman Reigns. And they hated that he was being shoved down their throats too. And Roman acknowledged that in this interview too. Roman was very self-aware. He was very personable. This was the best Roman Reigns interview I've ever seen. You absolutely have to go out of your way to see this. And that's not that Logan Paul was a great interviewer, because I honestly think he sucks as an interviewer. But he's got that childish curiosity about things. Like there was this funny segment where Logan was just kind of casually brought up like, hey, this wrestling stuff actually kind of hurts. I didn't expect it to be so real. And that kind of actually led into a little tease for what we would see on SmackDown. Check out this clip.
I got into this business not sure what to expect. And sometimes shit gets really real. You know,
yeah.
Like a lot of those moves aren't like moves, dude. Like they hurt.
It all hurts.
Yeah, what?
I don't know if you got to tell me which ones aren't hurting you, so I can use those falls and moves. But yeah, I mean, you know, we're not delivering the mail. It's not ballet.
Has it ever
sucks,
been
man.
too rough and gotten too real as a result?
No, because I mean, if it's gotten too real, then the performance gets screwed up, and it gets awkward, and you can tell there's not a chemistry or a flow to it. That's the art of it.
He's really locked in on this being the main champion thing. He's talked about it constantly. Like, it's gonna be mine. It's an easy takeaway. I can grab that thing whenever I want it. Like, the opponents aren't that strong.
Oh, you talking about my stuff?
Yeah. No, him. He's 100% saying the title's his. Like, basically, you can just
My
walk.
stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, basically, you just walk up and take it any day. Like,
Oh.
doesn't even have to really practice. or anything.
Both my co-hosts are they could be pricks.
Those are the worst friends in the world, right? The friends that goat you into a fight. They're like, yeah, he was talking mad shit about you. He said he could just snatch that belt whenever he feels like it. I think that was maybe put in there for this whole, looks like Logan is going to be facing Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, it was cute. It was cute is the word I would use of just the innocence, the sweet innocence of a young, still a green, still trying to learn the business, Logan Paul, just kind of coming to the realization that wrestling is stiff as fuck. Wrestling hurts. I don't know what he was expecting going into wrestling, that he was just going to be going out there and just doing like fucking choreographed flippy floppies like a trapeze act or something like that, like a gymnast. That shit's physical as fuck, dude. And I'm here to tell you, like, I was never a wrestler, but I got my ass beat in the ring many times, okay? And I'm here, I've been put through a table, I've been busted open with a fork, I've been stabbed in the head with a fork. I've been through the ringer, and let me tell you, wrestling hurts. It's choreographed, and as Roman said, like, if it just devolves into a full-out shoot where you guys are just throwing punches back and forth, because they got into receipts and that kind of thing, and Roman was talking about, if a guy hits you too hard, you hit him back hard. And they're like, well, don't you guys just end up beating the fuck out of each other the whole match then? And Roman's like, no, because then we're not professionals. Then that guy needs to end up going to work for the UFC or something, not WWE, because he's in the wrong business. So they are professionals, and they do try their best to take care of you, but it is a physical fucking sport. There's no doubts about that at all. If you're going to get in the ring, you're going to get hurt, and you're going to hurt people, and that's just what it is. It's a tough guy business. I don't give a fuck what anybody says, even right down to like the pansiest looking wrestlers you can think of, like the Miz. People still don't take Miz seriously as a tough guy. Well, I'm here to tell you, Miz will beat the fuck out of you. He'll beat the fuck out of anybody listening to this in a heartbeat. Miz is a tough guy. He's a damn tough guy. For as long as he's been in the wrestling business, as many matches as he's had, you know how many times that guy's gotten punched in the face? You know how many times he's punched people in the face? You know how many times he's had been dropped on his head, had a knee to the head? These motherfuckers get their asses beat. I'll tell you, there was one time I took and it's on the simplest shit too. Like I said, I got stabbed in the head with a fork and put through a table. You know what hurt me the most in wrestling? I've been super kicked, all that stuff. The worst that I was hurt in a wrestling ring was I got leg dropped one time. Just a leg drop. And I don't know, I believe I was just supposed to sit still. And I believe like I turned my head, and I don't know if it was just a flinch or whatever, but like I was just looking up at the lights, and then at the last second I turned my head sideways, and I don't know what difference that made or if it would have made any at all. This motherfucker like landed on my head, and I had a pounding headache the rest of the night. My neck was stiff, like when I turned, I think it got jarred a little bit. My friends were ripping on me saying that I got a concussion and shit. So yeah, wrestling's physical as fuck, man. And you get in there and just the simplest things like a leg drop, any little thing can hurt you in there. And these are tough guys to be able to do that night in and night out. And it's funny that Logan Paul's just kind of starting to realize that now. He's starting to realize what he's getting into. But look, Logan Paul's a tough guy too. He goes out there and does boxing matches and shit. This guy boxed Floyd Mayweather. Not that Mayweather's a big tough guy that beats people up or anything. He's kind of a dancer, right? Like he just kind of hops around you and avoids you. But Paul's a tough dude, and he's going to do just fine in the WWE. I don't know about this whole matchup with Roman Reigns. I don't know. I think that's a bit quick to just put him in there with the big dog like that. Not just, because he's green, but because Logan Paul just hasn't earned a WWE championship match yet, or even any kind of main event spot. It's a bit much to just throw him in there with Roman. It's a money draw. It'll draw. And who knows, it being at Crown Jewel, that could have been something that they specifically requested. We all know that the Saudi prince basically books the goddamn card. Here's $1 bajillion. Let me play with your wrestlers for a little bit. It's like a guy paying you to let him borrow your fig fed for a little while. You let him borrow all your action figures and your ring and that kind of stuff. And he's going to go out there and he's going to book his matches and what his cards would look like and shit. So I'm sure it'll be a fine match. It's not going to suck. Logan Paul's a very talented guy, and he's going to continue to get better the more that he does this. But and working with Roman's going to help him come along. I just think it's a little bit too soon. But my God, do you got to go out of your way to watch this interview with Roman Reigns? This is the best Roman Reigns interview I've ever heard. And again, it's not because he was... Logan and his buddies are such fine interviewers, because they're not. They're arguably the worst interviewers, especially for wrestlers, But this humanized Roman so much, and we got to see such a different side of Roman Reigns for a long form, and he seems like a dude that you'd want to hang out with and have a drink with and kick it with and bullshit with, He seems like a cool guy. He's Joe Chill. And, and even when there was, there's one of Logan's co-hosts was kind of an annoying little fucker. And, they're just obnoxious, the whole Logan Paul and his friends they'll wear on you a little bit over time. And Roman was just cool as shit and just playing along the whole time. So good stuff from that. I have linked that down in the description if you would like to go ahead and watch that full interview. I highly recommend you do. And while you do that, before you do that, let's go ahead and check out the next clip. Drama ensues with two former black and gold brand NXT talents, EC3 and the Velveteen Dream. The drama broke out after EC3 appeared on the Wrestling Outlaws podcast, going down memory lane. This is some dude along with Vince Russo, apparently. I don't know if Russo is on the show or if he was just a guest as well. But it was Vince Russo, it was EC3, and it was some other host type dude. And EC3 went into this whole story about how he had a party at his house, and while he was in NXT, and he had a few of the boys at his house. They were partying, they were drinking, they were doing illicit drugs, apparently, as it's come out. And EC3 went in the bathroom to take a piss and noticed that there was a phone recording him while he was doing it. This, according to him anyway. Check out this clip.
What about him? What do we want to know? So he got arrested again. When's he going to get rehired? Probably not if that's on his record. Plus, he has a lot of demons in the closet. Oh, what do you mean? Glad. I'm glad you asked. Why not? Because in NXT, there was always, some speculation about him being a little bit off. But, you welcome that and you could be friends. And we had a party and it was at my place. And, he came over because I'm being friendly and I'm, top guy, and I try to welcome everybody into a thing, and he left his phone in my bathroom with the camera on, trying to capture people taking pisses. So there.
Wait a minute. Now, how do you know he didn't accidentally leave the phone in the toilet?
Because genius, Vince, I'm a master of psychology of human mind, body, spirit, and soul. So how did I know? Because it's my bathroom, and I walk in there, and I see a phone selfie style propped up on filming, where if somebody is going to take a pee, they would have their phallus out urinating into
That ain't
the
gonna fly.
water.
Phallus ain't gonna fly with Raju. Leaning
like this.
against like the back of the bowl, like the back, you're looking right at it.
Right at it. Not like, well, the soap dispenser. So it's to the right a little bit. And I was like,
Angled a bit.
Did you confront them?
so what I did was I took the phone, I stopped the recording, I made sure the PP video of my wee was deleted.
Very nice.
Because that was happening in my home, by the way. So delete, put it back, turn it back on so it didn't look like somebody, so it looked like the it was still happening, the big elaborate ruse. I walk out of my own bathroom because this is where I live. And I sit on the couch and I go, and I wait. And he goes right back to the bathroom. And I go back in right after that. Phone's gone. I'm like, I can't believe this.
Look, if that really happened, that's creepy as fuck. Can you imagine, not just in like a public bathroom or over at a buddy's house or somebody else's place or something, where you see a camera recording you while you're pissing, but in your own home. You look over at your soap dispenser and the fucking red light is on. That shit is rolling and you got your dick out in your hand. That's scary shit. And so he goes out and he, sits down on the couch. He leaves the phone where it was. He wants to see who the fuck set that up. And he blames the Velveteen Dream. Look, EC3 is not the type of guy that's going to go out there and just make shit up. He doesn't have a history of just being a lying asshole that's just out there making stuff up about people and all of that. He has kind of gone astray a little bit ever since he's been released from the WWE. I feel like he's been on a bit of a downward slope there. He's very divisive. You either like EC3 or you don't at this point. He's not one that's ever shy to give his opinions, or, he's definitely not going to bite his tongue. But he doesn't make a habit of just coming out and just accusing people of shit like this. So there has to be something to that, right? Especially with all the other stuff we've heard about Velveteen Dream. And it's all rumors. There's nothing that's really stuck against Velveteen other than like his recent arrest and cocaine, all that kind of shit. But, it seems to kind of be in line with Velveteen Dream's character. Though we don't know for sure because Velveteen Dream couldn't just bite his tongue and let this slide. He's been in the news as well a lot lately for some not so savory things. And of course, while all of this was going on in the media, he decided that he was going to throw his 2 cents out there. And he recorded a video in his car rebutting EC3. Check out this clip.
I'm trying to help my old man out on a computer, and I just type in WWE, right? Tell me why. The first thing I see is EC3 has talked to the dirt sheets. I guess since I'm on TMZ now, I'm somebody again. EC3 has gone to the dirt sheets saying that, if you haven't seen it, he had a party at his house one night. Mike, EC3, you go out here after I give you the best match you've ever had in your entire career. You go out here and you dirt. I'm tired of people throwing dirt on my name. You throw this dirt on my name saying that I tried to record you in your bathroom. Let's be honest, Mike. You're leaving out a lot of details. What were we doing that night, Mike? What type of powder was on the table, Mike? Okay, let's be real. So let's not leave out all the details. We were all drunk. You were pissy drunk because you were in your place. You were damn near passed out in the corner. You and your homegirl, whichever chick you were screwing at the time, okay? And the other 2 people, our mutual friends, were there. I left my phone on your bathroom counter. And because you were not sure of my sexuality at the time because of the character I played on TV and because we're not friends in real life at all, okay? You try to accuse me of recording you in your own home. So what did I do? I went to our mutual friend who no longer works for the WWA, former NXT talent, and I showed him my phone and had him go through my photos and videos and my recently deleted, just to prove to you and the other person that was there, I had him prove to you that I was not recording you. Cocaine is a hell of a drug, EC3. Get your shit together. And if anyone would like to go to my friends list right now and check out who follows me, because I'm not following him, EC3 is a follower of mine. I would really think that if you thought that much of me, that you couldn't trust me, you definitely wouldn't be following me on social media, on Instagram, all these years later, EC3. You're pathetic. Now control that narrative, you asshole.
Man, it's sad to see how far Velveteen Dream has fallen, hasn't it? I mean, there was a time where you could have said that Velveteen Dream was going to main event WrestleMania someday, and I wouldn't have argued with you. He was a megastar in NXT. He had everything you needed to be a top star. He wasn't the best worker in the world, but his character, his charisma, his personality, the way that he would get, even just like his gear, remember where he had like "Call Me Up" Vince on his tights and stuff? I think he caught a little heat from that one, actually. But he came out dressed in the NWO gear one time and stuff like that. Like, Velveteen Dream was a megastar, and he had really good matches in NXT. He was a main event level talent, at least at the NXT level. Had he been called up to the main roster, which, if he wasn't such a fuck up and a creep, allegedly, then he would absolutely be on the main roster by now and would have had those main event WrestleMania moments. Maybe not main event, but he'd be in the top mix for sure. He was a very strong candidate to be a WWE icon for years to come. And he blew it all. Blew it all just by being a douchebag outside of the ring. His indiscretions, with younger... I think it was a younger boy, wasn't it? Was a dude, was under the age of 18. But that's just rumored. Nothing was ever proven. Of course, now, there's all, the cocaine thing where apparently he snorted a line of coke right in front of a cop while he was getting pulled over. And this just shortly after he was arrested for being violent at a gym. Like, Velveteen Dream has fallen off the rocker. This guy is on a downward spiral in life. And look, we all hit our highs and lows, right? There's Velveteen Dream main eventing NXT TakeOver, and there's Velveteen Dream, there's, Patrick Clark snorting lines of cocaine in front of a police officer, which, in my opinion, is actually a brilliant move, because then you can't get charged with possession of cocaine. It's not illegal to be high on cocaine. It's only illegal to have cocaine in your possession. So at worst, you're looking at paraphernalia, using cocaine and paraphernalia. Like, you'll never get busted with a set amount of coke. As long as you're able to snort it all up in one line, like, fuck, you're not going to be able to tell how much coke I had. You're not going to be able to get me for possession. You'll be able to get me for the straw that I got that has coke residue in it. Ooh, Scott Hall, right? But no, Velveteen Dream has fallen from grace, and it's sad to see, and EC3 is too. This whole thing is almost like the battle of guys that have fallen from grace after their washed up NXT days. And it's sad for both of them. EC3, not so much. He's still out there just trying to do his thing, and be productive. Though I think the whole control your narrative thing's kind of flopped now that Braun Strowman has moved back on over to greener pastures. But at least he's trying, right? I never liked... I guess I liked at first when EC3 came out with the control your narrative gimmick after he was released, and he shaved his head and grew the beard, and he was like a tough, gritty guy now. But I think I liked him much better when he was the rich, pampered nephew of Dixie Carter. Even over in NXT, it was EC3. It was still the one percenter. I love that character for him. There's a million generic looking tough guys out there. And, it's a lot harder to get over in that mix. But, you got to try to reinvent yourself to an extent, too, especially after a release. But Velveteen Dream, man, like, it just makes me sad. It makes me sad that he's made the life choices that he's made, because even back in Tough Enough, I liked Patrick Clark. I remember when he was on Tough Enough and he was the wrestling fan. Everybody else was on there just trying to get a quick buck. I think Stone Cold was the host. It might have been the year like Hulk Hogan and Paige and stuff were hosts instead. I don't remember. But this might have been the one that Mandy Rose was on. But Patrick Clark was like one of the dudes that was actually a wrestling fan, and he went hard. I remember there was some drama on the show where he was yelling at somebody for not knowing something about wrestling history. He's like, you need to study this stuff, kind of flipping out. I guess we saw early glimpses of, how dramatic Patrick Clark could be, but he was being passionate about his love for wrestling, So it was interesting. And I always liked Patrick from that. I was rooting for him. He didn't make the cut, but eventually he did end up finding his way back to the WWE, up through the NXT system. And just the rise of the Velveteen Dream character, he was over as a motherfucker. I know we can look back in hindsight and we can all say, oh, well, he's a goofball now and he was just a flash in the pan in wrestling. And he was. That flash was bright as fuck. And I think we easily forget that, how close to Patrick Clark came to being a fucking megastar in professional wrestling. And now look at him, he's fucking at rock bottom. So thoughts and prayers for Patrick Clark. I hope he gets his shit together. And I hope he's done videotaping people's penises and cocks and balls and stuff. And for him to say, like in that video clip, there were guys doing, what kind of powder were we doing at that part? Like, shut the fuck up, dude. Not necessary, right? It's just a little Coke. Everybody loves a little Coke, right? Anyways, with all that said, if you want to hear both of those clips, I have linked them down in the description below in full form. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next. The Strowman, Braun Strowman, was on the After the Bell podcast this week with Corey Graves and Vic Joseph, talking about his big WWE return. Strowman also talked a lot about his mental health. He's got this app gimmick out now that's related to mental health, talking about his time away from the WWE and how he used that opportunity to grow. And as he talks about that, he does not miss a chance to put himself over strongly. Check out this clip.
I honestly needed a break. 9 years with the company at that point, basically in the driver's seat of a Ferrari doing 200 mile an hour for 9 years straight. Everything's just blowing by you in tunnel vision. Now I have this opportunity to step outside of the bubble of the business and go, holy, I have done a lot of stuff. In five and a half years, I've literally beaten everyone there is to beat in WWE. I've won every title except the U.S. Championship. I've main evented every pay-per-view. I've sold out every building on this earth. I've wrestled with the great, you name it, I've been in the ring with them. So one, it was an awesome opportunity to take that step back and go, holy cow, man, look what you've done. And screw it, I pat myself on the back. Who else has done that in this industry? To come in with zero wrestling experience, be the first time I ever stepped a foot in a ring was at FCW for my tryout. The first inaugural class in the WWE Performance Center, the first wrestler without wrestling experience to come out of the Performance Center and make it the main roster, arguably the most successful to do it still to this day, and all in a matter of 5.5 years.
Yeah, Adam Shearer, not the most humble guy in the world. He was very famous for his hot takes while he was away from the WWE ring. Always willing to throw his 2 cents out there, and usually in a negative way. Very abrasive guy. Rubs a lot of people the wrong way. In fact, I'm surprised that he was brought back to the WWE. Look, I was surprised when he was let go, because Braun Strowman was at the top of the card. to begin with, you know, so that's always a head scratcher when you release some of your main event talent. But you know, maybe they just saw something in him that we weren't seeing as fans. You know, maybe he had kind of reached his ceiling at some point. You know, maybe they saw that there wasn't going to be much growth available for this guy, that he was going to end up just being like a big mid-card monster, which is useless, right? But Triple H seems to think very highly of Braun Strowman. He put him over in his interview with Ariel Helwani, saying that, you know, he sees a lot of value in him and that if he wants to come back and give it a try at the highest of levels, he's willing to have him, willing to take him in. I don't know if he has any immediate current creative plans for Strowman. I think maybe they're going to get the tag team back together with him and that kid so they can defend the tag team championships again. That was the goofiest shit ever in the history of wrestling. But hey, made that kid's day, life, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Braun Strowman doesn't really do anything for me. I certainly didn't like pop when Strowman came out, though he got a great reaction when he did make his return to WWE. He's not for me. He's not my style. Strowman rubs me the wrong way. Even his voice kind of bugs me a little bit. I know, I'm being petty as fuck. I get it. I just don't like Braun Strowman. And I don't know what Triple H has in mind for him, but obviously he brought him back for a reason. And look, the dude looks great, you know, so it's not like he wasn't taking himself seriously while he was away or working towards getting back. Because that's, you know, something we've been around long enough to see now, is that guys that get released, if they put the work in, if they can reinvent themselves, keep themselves relevant, and get themselves to a better place, whether it's physically the way they look, or they've done significant character development or in-ring work, whatever the case may be, there's always room to come back as long as you didn't leave on bad terms, you know. Apparently Triple H has that soft spot for Strowman. I don't see it, but hey, God bless him. But this was certainly, it was an interview. Strowman talked a lot. He didn't take too many breaths to let Corey Graves or Vic Joseph slide anything in. I know Braun had said in this interview as well that he was asked, you know, if he had gotten any other offers from anybody else in the other than WWE while he was away, and he basically said, like, yeah, I have, but I'm not going to work for anybody other than myself or WWE. He kind of took credit for Control Your Narrative. I thought that was EC3's thing. Apparently it's Braun Strowman's thing as well. Like, I know he was part of it, but I didn't know he was like a founder or anything like that. But yeah, time will tell how Triple H ends up using Braun Strowman, and if he's able to have the same kind of run that he had the first time around, if he's going to be that main event level talent, or if he's just going to be a flash in the pan. Time will tell. Lars Frederiksen, the lead singer of megastar punk band Rancid, was on the Sessions podcast with Renee Paquette this week. Of course, Lars Frederiksen, huge wrestling fan, friends with CM Punk, singer of the song Ruby Soho, that Ruby Soho is named after and uses as her entrance theme. Lars, a mega wrestling fan, so it was. I always am a fan of when these worlds collide, right? When you see these mega stars, professional athletes, rappers, singers, whatever, are huge fans of professional wrestling, and they don't hide it. I love that shit, and I like when these worlds cross over. So it was really fun to sit and listen to this interview with Renee. You know, we got to hear a lot about the music side of Lars and being the front man for Rancid, being such a fucking, you know, huge punk star in the world of punk rock music. He's an absolute legend. But it was in this particular clip where he starts talking about his wrestling fandom. That was obviously something that we would be interested in over here. Talks about his fandom for wrestling, meeting CM Punk, and he has his thoughts on AEW as well. Check out this clip.
Is that when you met Punk?
So I was on a Warp tour
with the Bastard. So this is 2004, 2005. And one of the sound guys was friends with him and said that we were played in Philly, and I was walking up the stage or the back of the stage to go play the show. And he was at the show and he's walking down. He said, "You're Lars Frederiksen." I said, "You're CM Punk." And we just kind of hit it off from there. There was an understanding there. You know, I'm obviously a little older than he is. And, you know, it's a little bit of a different generation, but it's the psychology and the mindset I think that we share. And through that's the friendship, you know. So over the years, it's just gotten stronger, and, you know, it's cultivated into more of a family member. And then the tape trading thing happened. And that's where I met Tony the first time.
Really?
Yeah. So he was on a Death Valley Driver, which was like a blog. You know, they would have lists and you would order and you would ask for certain matches maybe you didn't see. Like,
so you met Tony on this like chat board situation. What do you think about what he's been able to do now? I mean, creating AEW, creating this amazing alternative for people, and then, you know, going up against the things that are happening in WWE right now, which is now under the reign of Triple H.
What he's doing for the wrestling business is insane. He's bringing it to a whole different level that we're not going to we're seeing, you know, to some degree right now, but in 10 years from now, we're going to be really understanding what he's really doing. And I understand that people have their complaints about, like, you know, and whatever, and it all is what it is. But at the end of the day, he's giving somebody another option. It's like Uber and Lyft. It's like, you can pick which one you like and you can enjoy it. And I'm not going to go on Twitter and say, "Fuck Lyft." Fucking,
yeah.
Their pink sign. They're fucking stupid.
So in this podcast, Lars casually mentions that at one time he poked a guy's eye out with his thumb, just like dug his thumb in the guy's eye socket during a street fight and popped his fucking eyeball out as a kid. I think he said he did it as a kid. Lars is a crazy ass punk rocker. He's a crazy motherfucker, but he's a diehard, unabashed wrestling fan, and we love that over here, don't we? We love our wrestling fans because we're wrestling fans. He's a mark. He's a giant fucking mark. You know, talking all about how he discovered wrestling and wrestling coming up and everything, who he was a fan of, all of that stuff. It was interesting to hear how he met CM Punk. He's been buddies with Punk since the Ring of Honor days. And now, like, his kids call him Uncle Punk. Like, Punk's legit, like, a close personal friend of Lars at this point, like, member of the family. And all of this was just because Lars was a wrestling fan already. And obviously Punk would have been a Rancid fan. So the two there was the Mutual Appreciation Society, and they came together and sucked each other's dicks and jerked each other off. And they were best friends after that. Ruby Soho getting the theme song from Lars. You know, he talked in full depth about how it was his recommendation, and that he put it out there, and then that him and Ruby and Tony Khan and the rest of the band of Rancid kind of figured out a way that they could go about making this happen and getting the song out there as Ruby's entrance music. And it was interesting to hear his take on AEW, you know, how he thinks that a lot of the things that AEW is doing right now are things that we won't even recognize or appreciate until 10 years from now. And that was an interesting take. And I think he's right there. I think AEW is doing things right now that, a lot of us are kind of, as we live through it, maybe we don't appreciate it as much, but I think history will reflect pretty fondly on AEW overall. I guess that depends on how well they're able to recover from this CM Punk bullshit. I wonder what Lars, it's one thing that they did stay away from, unless the interview happened before then, maybe, I don't know. But how Lars would react, or what he would have to say about the Punk outbursts at the media scrum. That'll be interesting to hear if he ever speaks on that someday. But I just thought this was cool because, like I said, anytime that we get the crossover, you get the megastars from the mainstream. I wouldn't even say Rancid is a mainstream, but they are. You know, they're not like on TV and shit, but I mean, Rancid is as big, as famous of a punk rock band, a true punk rock band as you can find, you know. So it's definitely fun hearing this man not just talk about wrestling, but gush about wrestling. He was a fucking nerd about wrestling, and I love that. You could absolutely hear his fandom coming through, and to the point where he's breaking down psychology and shit. You know, he's talking about the fucking psychology of the matches, and even corrected Renee on something, you know, at one point. Was just like, no, but even more. It's like, it's about this. And he gets it. He fully understands the wrestling business. You know, he even made a little comment about how the fans are fickle and how they recently just booed Ruby Soho. And how he, you know, thought that she was going to be the big baby face and everything. It was just a great interview. So go out of your way to check out that interview, especially if you're a punk rock fan, especially if you're a Rancid fan. This one's a can't miss interview. Chris Jericho on Talk is Jericho this week posted his full stage live show interview that he did with Inside the Ropes a couple months ago overseas, talking about his history in AEW. They went into full detail about everything in this interview, from the debut, from being signed away from the WWE essentially, you know, what went into his decision to choose AEW over going back to WWE. You know, that first couple months where everything was on Jericho's shoulders. He was the champion. He was the guy carrying the brand, essentially, until they were able to get some of the other guys up and running. Talked about wrestling through the pandemic and all of that stuff. But it was in this particular clip right here where Chris Jericho was asked specifically about working with MJF. And instead of keeping kayfabe like everybody else likes to do in pro wrestling and talking about how Max is a big asshole and you know, a dickhead to work with, Jericho just straight up was honest about MJF. Check out this clip.
And, you know, with MJF, the last thing is obviously he's very much in the news right now with everything that's going on. What did you, like, learn about working with him, like, in terms of what he was like as a, you know, somebody to work with? And, you know, what do you see in his future?
He's really smart. He's really smart. And even though he's only been in the business 5-6 years, he really does have an air to him that he's been around, like, you know, 20 years. That's why I really enjoyed working with him, because he's really smart. He's still not as good as he's going to be. And that just comes with more time and more experience. So I used to say to him sometimes, you're not as good as you think you are yet. You're getting there, but you're still not as good as you think you are. And, you know, once again, I also have a motto, like, if it doesn't have anything to do with me, I don't pay attention to it or worry about it. So the whole thing with Max right now, if he was in a story with me, I might know a bit more about it, but he's not. It doesn't affect me either way, really, so I just kind of stay out of it. So I'm sure he'll be back, or maybe he won't be, but either way, he's going to be a huge star, even bigger than he already is, for a long time, because I think he just maybe turned 26 years old recently. So, I mean, that is a great, all he needs is a little bit more experience, which he'll get. But from a thinking standpoint, he's very smart, and he's also deceptively athletic.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of this coming around lately. A lot of people breaking kayfabe about MJF, and I don't know how I feel about that personally. I want to think that MJF's the biggest asshole, douchebag, piece of shit on the planet. That's the world I want to live in with MJF. And now, you know, people are just loosely talking about how MJF's just not, you know, he's this nice guy. Lars Frederiksen in the earlier on in the show, I did a clip for Lars Frederiksen talking with Renee Paquette about the wrestling business. And he said in that interview that MJF's one of the sweetest guys. He's a big sweetheart, he said. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't want to hear that MJF is a sweetheart in real life. But you know, Chris Jericho seems to be very fond of MJF, and he had said at the media scrum last week or 2 weeks ago now, I don't remember what it was, where he was talking about how MJF is going to be one of the biggest baby faces the industry's ever seen, and how MJF was saying, I don't want to be a baby face, man. You know, I don't know how I feel about everybody breaking kayfabe about MJF. You know, I'm not that stern on kayfabe, But I just think for MJF, he just has to always be an asshole, and that's the way to do it. But apparently he's a big sweetheart. He's a good guy. People like him. People are fond of him. And there's nothing but big things in MJF's future, dude. He already is a megastar, but I would even go as far as to say I could see MJF being a Hollywood guy at some point. You know, he's destined to be a megastar in this world. And I don't see anything holding him back, dude. The guy's straight on track for it. Chris Jericho puts him over heavy. And Chris Jericho's not a bad guy to be friends with. You know what I mean? Like, as a mentor. You know, you can say what you want about Chris Jericho or, you know, all your the Cornette fans out there are gonna have their 2 cents on a Chris Jericho. But, man, like, as a mentor, he's one of the smartest brains in professional wrestling. And he's been around and seen it all. So a guy like MJF would do wise to keep a Chris Jericho around as a mentor, as a close friend, you know, somebody he can bug and ask for advice. But yeah, MJF being a nice guy just rubs me the wrong way. I don't want to hear that shit. But yeah, he's destined for megastardom, and everybody sees that. And I hope at this point, you know, we can move past, as much of a CM Punk fan as I am, I hope we're able to move past the CM Punk experiment. I'm not saying fire the guy, but I'm saying, like, let's put the brakes on making him the face of the company and giving him the strap. And I think they need to be, and I think they are, starting to maneuver towards giving MJF the belt. MJF's got that chip now. He's got that casino chip. He's going to cash it in. He's not going to be a guy where he doesn't cash in and he's not the world champion. It's only a matter of time now until he's the world champion. And when he is, you build your fucking brand around that guy. You build around MJF. You make him your top guy. There's no other way around it. All right, y'all, that's all I got for you this week. Thank you again for sticking around all the way through the episode. And I do apologize. Some of these clips was having a little bit of tech issues, so there's a lot of these clips I had to start sometimes 3-4 times towards the end there. So I do apologize if some of them were cut a little bit short. Just kind of seem to be fighting with my computer today, and I don't like it. But I was able to make it through a full show for you guys, and I hope you did enjoy it. Before I take off, you know how it is here at the end of the show. I like to throw out my plugs. I'll make them quick for you. If you could, please like, follow, and subscribe at Seth Grimes Media on TikTok, Facebook, or Twitter. That would mean a whole lot to me. I do want to continue to grow my audience so that I can continue to deliver great content. I got a lot more that I would like to do. I just don't have the free time available to do it. You know, I would like to get myself to a point where this is a full-time gig, just making these kind of videos for you guys, and then I can go in and do a lot of extra bonus content. You know, in the past I've done the tier rankings and the tournament and that kind of stuff. I would like to do more of that, more reviews, more deep dives. I'd like to do a lot more shit on the wrestling side and on the reaction side too. I have a reactions video playlist here on this same channel. So if you are interested in seeing some of my outside of wrestling content, though there are wrestling reactions on there, hop on over and check those out. There should be something for everybody. I don't just react to one type of thing. You know, I react to music videos, everything from rock to pop to rap to all, you know, anything in between, anything that's coming out, I'm going to react to it. Also, you know, movie trailers and just other little fun things. I got a video of me reacting to raccoons taste testing Cheetos. So it's a fun place to go hang out if you want to see some additional content from me that is not always wrestling related. Also got a book out, The Gathering, A Bold Journey into the Belly of the Juggalo Underworld. You can check out the entire full first chapter of the audiobook, also available here right on my YouTube channel. Just look for the playlist labeled The Gathering Book. and it'll be right there. Links for everything down in the description if you want to check out on Audible, Kindle, or Amazon. And then finally, we do have some NFTs available. Pro wrestling inspired NFTs. They are themed after championship belts and cryptocurrencies. We're going to have a new one dropping in October that is going to be a charity belt for charity. It's going to be for cancer awareness, so it will be some sort of cancer-related championship crypto NFT belt. So keep an eye out for plugs for that if you're into the crypto stuff. If not, let's just move past it and move on with our lives. That's all I got for you. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me to the end. You guys are my homies, especially because it's the plugs at the end. I got to get my shit in, got to get it out there. But anybody that's supporting me on any level, whether you listen to the full show on the podcast or on the YouTube, or if you're just somebody that pops in and checks out clips from time to time, I very much appreciate you guys. Anybody that's helping me, every little bit helps me grow as a channel. And as I grow as a channel, I'm just going to keep putting it back into the content. I'm going to put more time into the content. I'm going to put more content out there. And eventually, when I'm able to, I'm going to upgrade and build a studio and all that fun stuff. This train ain't stopping. So I appreciate you guys being on for the ride. And with that said, I will let you guys get back to your day. And thank you so much for hanging out with me. Peace, love, and pizza. I am your boy, Seth Grimes. And this has been the Pro Wrestling Podcast.
I hate juggalos. I fucking hate them. I say all this with a grain of salt because for a good part of my own life, I proudly identified as a juggalo. You should come to the gathering with me. Nah, man, I'm not into all that whoop-whoop shit anymore. I'll pay for your ticket. I got fired today. Get the fuck out! Still got room for me? Spike, slow the fuck down! Cops!
Fuck your sleep. Fuck your sleep. Fuck your sleep.
The savages started closing in with their tiki torches and war paint. Shit. Run! You guys got a dead body here already? Even the aliens were throwing shade. It was pure panic and intense horror. There was a guy I saw got chopped in half. I had nothing left to go back to. You alive? Yep. The Gathering. A bold journey into the belly of the Juggalo underworld.